last time we talked at length about the Shema, about the recitation, how we recite the Shema, the different ways, the different paragraphs that are part of the Shema, the single line of the Shema itself and the accompanying paragraphs and how that all fits together. We talked a little bit about the singing of it and the response, when we add the 3 words at the beginning and when we add the 3 words at the end.
And why?
and why. And what I want to try to do today is try to now, pull the camera out for a slightly wider lens look at that part of the service, and not look at the Shema, but look at what surrounds the Shema. What comes immediately before the recitation of the Shema and what comes immediately after. And in Hebrew, hang on, let me share my screen here. In Hebrew, we refer to this part of the service as the Shema and its blessings. Kriyat Shema in Hebrew. Kriya means to recite, the singing, the speaking out. Kriyat Shema, the recitation of the Shema. Uvirchoteha, and her blessings, its blessings. As you'll see, that the Shema begins with the Baruch Hu. Right? The title of this section is not titled Baruch Hu and its blessings. The Shema is in the piece of the service that we're talking about today. Early in the Shacharit service, between the Baruch Hu and the Amidah. Are those are all terms you're familiar with? When I say between the Baruch Hu and the Amidah, you all know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, if you don't know what I'm talking about, ask, please. Okay. So, my question is a simple question, really. What blessings? The Shema and its blessings, what are the Shema's blessings? Now, here's what it's not, and you already know this. It's not a blessing that we say in order to recite the Shema, like the blessing for Shabbat candles. So I want to talk for a second about blessings and the formula for blessings. Okay? Blessing is one of those weird words because it means things in English that we don't mean when we use it in Hebrew. Right? Like, oh, what a blessing. Right? Meaning that's just something good that happened. Now, you can say in Hebrew, oh, it was a real bracha. Right? Like you can say that. It's not silly to say that. It makes sense in Hebrew. But in the context that we're talking about here, a blessing is a specific formulaic Hebrew recitation. And there are a number of different kinds of brachot, of blessings. And here where I'm talking about blessing, I mean a bracha, a specific formulation that begins Baruch Atah Adonai. And that's something which all brachot share in common. Baruch Atah Adonai. Very simple. Baruch, we usually translate as blessed, and it's that passive form of Hebrew. The root of the word bracha, Baruch, all of those words that share the same Hebrew root, is bet resh kaf, which is the Hebrew word for knee. Your knee on your leg, the knee. Your knees are your birkayim. So Baruch, blessed, means it references a bent knee. That's why we bend at certain times when we say Baruch Atah Adonai. We say Baruch, we bend our knee. Atah, we bow over. Adonai, we stand up straight. When we say, blessed are you, God, what we're really saying is, what we mean, I think, is you are deserving of a bended knee. We bend our knee to you. We praise you, right? That's what a bended knee is. It's a praising. Picture on Yom Kippur, when the Chazan goes down onto their knees and straight out in front of themselves, right? That's the spirit of the word Baruch. We acknowledge you, in other words. It's an acknowledgement of God's greatness, uniqueness, dominion, singularity, power, etc. Atah is the Hebrew word for you, praised, or atah, you. Adonai, a name that we use for God when we intend to mean universally powerful, ineffable, deserving of a bended knee. We don't say Elohim, for example. It's not Baruch Atah Elohim. Now, so those three words are practically universal in brachot. Then we have three more words. Eloheinu melech haolam. In Hebrew, well, Eloheinu means our God, right? Like in the Shema, Adonai Eloheinu, our God. Nu, u, that ending, nun, vav is us. So Aleinu, Hoshienu, Ufedenu, Barchenu, all those new, right? The ones that end nu, that means us. Do this for us. Lanu, otanu, anachnu. Those are Hebrew words for us. Eloheinu is our God. Melech means king, ha'olam, of the universe. So praised are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe. That's how we usually translate it. Baruch atah, Adonai Eloheinu, melech ha'olam. And the reason I'm spending so much time on this is that it's not just technical. The Eloheinu melech haolam has a force in the traditional formulation of blessings, and we call it Shem umalchut, where we recall God's name and God's kingship. Sometimes we just say God's name, and sometimes we add melech haolam. Okay, keep that in mind as we look at the blessings that we're saying. There are some blessings that are just Baruch atah Adonai ... And there's others that are Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam ... Okay, those are two variations on the theme. Okay, now I want to, before we jump into the text of the Siddur, I want to just say a little bit more about blessings and brachot in general, because it's really the fundamental piece of Jewish prayer is a bracha. Jewish tefillah is built in many ways around brachot, different formulations of these words that we use as the underlying structure. Those 6 words, Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, are dense, packed. They're potent words, and they are the sort of official formulation of many of the constructs in the prayer service. Just think of the Amidah, right? The Shemona Esrei, which is just 18, 19, 7, whatever the number for the day, blessings. All the rest is extra, accreted onto the blessings. But if you took all that extra away, you'd have a skeleton of brachot. We have birchot hashachar, the early morning brachot, blessings that we say. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, right? That the whole long dozen different blessings that we say first thing in the morning. According to Jewish tradition, a person ideally would say mea brachot, 100 brachot every day. And if you start to add them up, that sounds like a huge number, right? Like what else can you possibly do during your day? But if you pray 3 times a day, right, that's 3 times 18. Just in the Amidah, there's many, many more blessings, plus the morning blessings, plus blessings after and before you eat, blessings for a dozen different things that you might do incidentally throughout the day, things that you might happen to see. So it's a lot of blessings, but it's not undoable. And the notion is that your day is structured by a series of recognitions. It's about conscious living. That by saying a bracha, you make yourself aware of something which is happening around you. Now, outside of the Siddur, brachot have just a few particular kinds of formulations. One is what's called pleasure brachot, birchot nehenin, things like food. Right? We say Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri ha'etz, who creates the fruit of the tree, and then we eat the apple. In other words, a bracha empowers you to do something which you're not supposed to do without saying this formulation. According to the rabbis, to eat without saying a bracha is like stealing. That the thing which gains you permission to eat of that food, which allows it to belong to you, is to recognize that you're not the miraculous one who made it happen. I didn't make that apple. Even the farmer didn't make the apple. The apple is miraculous. That the earth feeds us is pretty amazing. And the truth is, in modern living, we treat it as very pedestrian, matter-of-fact sort of thing that we don't pay any attention to. That's sort of contrary to the bracha mind. So all of the blessings that have to do with food, with smelling fragrant things, with seeing beautiful things, all of that is one kind of blessing. Then there are blessings that are generated by the occasion. Things like shehechianu, right? When something unique happens, new to you, you say, praise to you, God, who allowed me to live to this moment. It's sort of a catch-all blessing. When you hear that someone has died, there's a special blessing you say when you hear that someone died. That blessing doesn't have Shem and Malchut. It's not an Eloheinu melech haolam. It's just Baruch atah Adonai Dayan ha'emet. Death is a miracle. It is the natural and miraculous concluding part of life.
Is that what that means, Dayan?
Dayan is a judge. Dayan means judge, and emet means truth. Dayan ha'emet means the true judge. Mm-hmm. It's an acknowledgement that this death is just. It's a very hard blessing to say sometimes.
Yeah,
Very
but
hard.
at first you said it's a miracle. I think you
Yeah.
said death is a miracle.
I did, because it's a part of the great cycle of life. Without death, there could be no life. There would be no room for life to continue. That life doesn't go forever is part of its miracle. It's hard. I mean, that's a painful thing to say. I'm not saying that casually, Sue. I'm saying it very,
I know.
right? Miracles aren't always easy. Sometimes, sometimes it's hard. By the way, there's also a blessing for when you hear good news. You say, Baruch atah Adonai hatov v'hametiv, God who is good and who causes good things to happen. So if you win the lottery, right, you can't say, hey, I did it. No, you have to acknowledge that there's forces at work that are beyond us and our comprehension. We recognize them. We see God's part. There's also blessings which are focused on mitzvot. For example, the blessing to put on a talit. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam. And then mitzvah blessings either say al, something, regarding something, or li, to do something. So lehadlik ner shel Shabbat. Praise are you, Adonai, our God, ruler of the universe. And then the mitzvah ones add asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. 4 additional words. Who has commanded us, asher kiddeshanu, made us holy, b'mitzvotav, through your mitzvot, and commanded us. So it's an acknowledgement and gratitude for the mitzvot. It is the mitzvot which make Jews unique and holy. And we were commanded to light the Shabbos candles, to put on the talit, to wrap the tefillin, to put up a mezuzah, to wave the lulav, to sit in the sukkah, to eat the matzah, right? All of those brachot add the asher kiddeshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu. Okay, any questions about any of that?
No, but I would just like to say my daughter's Orthodox, and so she says all of those all day long.
Right.
And people say, oh, why do they do that? I mean, even when your body functions correctly, right?
Yeah, that's right.
And I think it's weird, but I think if you really experience that with somebody who really lives it, you realize it's beautiful and it's making you stop to be aware and be thankful rather than, like you said, take everything for granted. You just expect everything to work and you expect food to be on the table and you expect, everything to just happen. And I think it's really special to take the time to do that.
I do too. When it's best, it is a practice in conscious living and thoughtful, present living.
Mm-hmm.
And it's in not taking things for granted. I want to say the pitfall of it, because I'm also a skeptic, right? I understand how the downsides of how religion works. This can in fact produce the very result that it's trying to avoid, which is it can make it routinized and scripted and meaningless.
Right.
Right? I mean, you know how many, I'm going to say this kind of like provocatively, but there's lots of people who say blessings and then eat like pigs. Right? So it's not a guarantee, right? It's not magic where you make this recitation, you rub the sticks the right way and you get the magic spark. No, it's not that. it's if you do it with the intention of slowing down and appreciating and becoming a conscious person, then it serves to create a Jewish habit.
Right, which is true about any prayer. Any prayer,
correct.
It has to be done with intention, or it's just rote.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. So, and I bless my food. I mean, when I remember, you know, I don't always remember, but when I remember, I say bracha when I eat my food. Why wouldn't I?
Mm-hmm.
Right? It's painless. I think we talked about this last time a little bit. I think people just feel like it's like they're a little embarrassed, you know, to be spiritual. I think people are a little embarrassed to be spiritual. And I don't know, I understand that, but I feel that's sort of sad.
Right.
They think it's like weak. It's like, oh, that's weak. You know, that's like, oh, you still believe in that religion stuff? You still like, you know, opiate of the masses? I'm like, no, it's not like that. That's not what it is for me at all. Yeah.
It's like when you go out to dinner and you're in a restaurant, you see non-Jewish people, and they, you know, you notice sometimes at the table, they will hold hands, and they, or not hold hands, but they will say their whatever prayer.
Yeah.
And people say that's weird, but it's not. I mean,
it's not weird.
It's not weird. I mean, it's really, I'd like to start doing more of that myself. You see a rainbow, you know, you stop and you see the rainbow.
Right. There's many of those. And if it's weird, maybe it is weird. If it's weird, then this is in favor of weirdness. Right? Because, and I think there is something to that, Sue. I do think religious living can be thoughtless and mechanistic and automaton, but it can also be countercultural. It can condition you to question the common cultural narrative. And so it can be weird, because sometimes the common cultural narrative is non-religious, non-spiritual, very technological. And often those are seen as competing and incompatible qualities, that either you're modern or you're spiritual. And if you're spiritual, you somehow got your head in the sand. You're not really a modern person somehow. Like, I think that's a bias of non-spiritual people.
Say that.
Yeah. I mean, not non-spiritual. I don't know. That's maybe, you know what I mean. Spirituality is a muscle. It has to be developed and exercised. It's not magic. It's like art, right? Some people think, oh, I'm not an artist. Well, I'm sure there is natural inclination and natural, you know, stuff that happens, and genetic things that, you know, it's not surprising that one singer's father and grandfather are also great singers, right? I mean, that's not surprising. But if that person doesn't develop it, then they don't become a singer, right? Art is not magic. People who can draw, it's not like they have some magic quality. They practiced. First, they drew stick figures, and then they were like, oh, there's technique and perspective and shading, and there's a way to develop your ability to draw. It can be done, just like spirituality. People are like, oh, I'm not very spiritual. I'm not very religious. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. That's like saying, I'm not very smart. Like, smart is developed. You're not, no baby is smart, right? Nobody is born knowing how to do yoga, even though there's like child's pose, right? You know what I mean? Like, these are developed skills for adults. like tennis.
Okay.
Right. It can be broken down. Spirituality can be broken down. It can be trained. It can be learned. It can be practiced. And one really good way. And Sue, I think it's even is the brachot. I think it's a specifically good way because it's quick and it's private. It's not payas and big hat that like shout out somehow, like that make it like you can just sit at the table, hold hands, and say a short little thing, and it's quiet. It's simple.
Right. I guess if you want to start doing that, the best way is to maybe pick one blessing and practice that and pick another one.
That's right. Say, I'm going to add this one. I'm going to add this one today. I'm going to add this one. I like this. I'm going to add it. I'm going to keep doing that. Okay. I'll just say this and then we'll jump into the text. My in-laws had a really beautiful, sweet little custom that they had that Joanna and I adopted from them. They used to, and I don't know where they got it. Maybe they learned it from their parents or something like that, or maybe it was just like a sweet thing they did when they were young. But before they would serve dinner, and before they would eat, they're religious people, but when they were younger, they weren't like, churchy religious kind of people. They were just, regular people. They didn't say grace before meals growing up, but mom and dad would hold each other's hands and they would kiss each other's hands. They go, kiss each other's hands and give a little squeeze and acknowledge each other before they ate.
Oh, how
Isn't that the sweetest thing?
It is.
And so Joanna and I, quite consciously, we said, let's do that. And every now and then people look at us like, oh, newlyweds, oh, you're so cute, or whatever. People sort of, there's a little, cutesiness about it. But we do it even when people aren't looking. It's not a public thing. It's just, and then it became habit. And so when the food comes, you reach and you grab their hand, and it works. It does pause you. It reminds you, I'm eating together. This in and of itself is worthy of consideration. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah. I read this just today. I'll say, I think it was it's either the birthday or the yahrzeit for Warren Zevon. You know him? Singer, songwriter, Warren Zevon. He wrote a bunch of well-known stuff that you probably know from other people singing it, but he also had a whole solo career as singer-songwriter. Anyways, he was diagnosed young with advanced cancer, and he had a lifelong phobia of doctors, which served him poorly because he had not been to a doctor in 25 years or something Anyways, long story short. His last, I read a thing today that his last performance was on the David Letterman show, and that he and David Letterman were close friends, offline as well as on Celebrity. And that when he was diagnosed and he was terminally and he was dying, Letterman devoted an entire show to him. He was the only guest that night. And he played whatever he wanted to play, and they talked about whatever they wanted to talk about. This is apparently, I haven't seen it, but it was apparently a very sentimental and sweet and really sort of remarkable moment on TV. Anyways, Letterman asked him, is there any lesson that you can impart from, this terminal illness? And he said, enjoy every sandwich. He said, don't take even the most simple, common, everyday thing for granted. Everything is remarkable. I love that. Enjoy every sandwich.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
I feel that way. I think that's the blessing. Okay. Any other comments here? Nope. Okay. Now let's get to the Shema and its blessings. So, there are 3 blessings in the morning service, every morning service, weekdays, Yom Tov, and Shabbat. 3 blessings that are said between the Baruch Hu and the Amidah. And we're going to look at that. Okay, so just to set these blessings in their larger context, we're on page 149 in Lev Shalem. We say the Baruch Hu et Adonai Amivorach, Baruch Adonai Amivorach le'olam va'ed. Right? Okay. And then there is a blessing here that's associated with the Baruch Hu. This is actually the concluding piece of the Baruch Hu. Baruch atah Adonai. You see here that 6-word formula. Eloheinu melech haolam. Yotzer, or God who creates light. Uvorei choshech, and darkness. Oseh shalom, who makes peace. Uvorei et hakol, and creates everything. Interestingly enough, if you look over here in the note, forming light, this opening bracha before the Shema acknowledges that we experience God, first of all, through witnessing the miracle of creation. This is the beginning of a longer bracha. Praying in the morning, we are asked to pay attention to the wonder of the dawn, the sunlight of a new day. In the liturgy, the break of dawn is then imagined as a chorus of song in which we join. This bracha, here's the point I want to make, is adapted from a verse in Isaiah. See, a lot of the Siddur, even when we don't know it's directly quoted out of the Bible, is informed by and is resonant with the Bible. It's a big part of why it's important, I think. This is maybe a topic for a different day, but why it's important to pray in Hebrew is because it's not translation from the Bible, it's the Bible. So in Isaiah, it says, Oseh shalom uvorei ra. God who creates shalom, peace, and creates evil. Wow, well, that's very different than who creates peace and makes peace and creates everything. See what they did here? Instead of saying uvorei et hara, who creates evil, they just said, yeah, he creates everything.
Mm-hmm.
Which, that includes evil. See how we get around that? Like, we can maintain, we don't have to say it. It sounds bad to say it. God creates evil. But if God creates everything, that includes all the not good stuff. So we kind of cover that base without being obvious. The prophet insists that both evil and good come from one God. But in the moment of prayer, we focus on all for which we can be thankful, beginning with light. Therefore, the ancient rabbis transformed this biblical verse and changed the ending to read, creating all. And I would just say, like, they transformed the verse, they subverted it in a way for a noble and wonderful purpose. Now, on Shabbat, we're going to recite a lot of things kind of quietly. Here's where we do a little of the mumbling and coming back on together at the red triangles. Okay, so I want you to continue to take note of the red stage notes and the red triangles. Whenever you get lost, if you're not sure where the reader is, jump ahead to a red triangle. Right? That's where they're going to be. That's why those are there. They're there for not just for the reader, but for the congregant as well. Right? And if that's not the one, jump ahead another one. Right? Okay, you're one ahead or you're one behind. But the reader will almost always come back to those touchstones in the quiet. I say mumbling not to be disrespectful, just to be descriptive. So all this we say to ourselves, Hakol yoducha ve'hakol yishabchucha. Mumble, mumble, right? We say it all quietly to ourselves. Ein kerkecha Adonai ba'olam hazeh, ve'ein zuladcha malkeinu l'chayei ha'olam haba, efes milcha yoleinu mot ha'mashiach, ve'ein dome l'cha moshienu l'tchiyat ha'metim. Right? All of that is Sabbath-oriented poetry. And all of this is Sabbath-oriented poetry. Here you see an A, B, C, an acrostic. Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Daled, Hey, Vav, Zayin, Chet. Each of these 22 letters through the Hebrew alphabet. And we usually sing this. And if you look at the passage over here, it talks about glory and God's throne and God's presence and the incredible, you fashioned all the lights of the universe and endowed everything, dominion and luminous. It's all this very cosmic and universal imagery. This is not about God, the God of Israel, God, the God of Abraham. Abraham is not in this poem. Israel is not in this poem. This is all universal. Remember, God creates peace. Uvore et hakol. It's God, the universal creator. Give glory to God's name. Invoke God's sovereignty. God called forth the sun and considered and set the cycles of the moon. All the holy beings of the heavenly host give praise and glory to honor God. There's really nothing inherently Jewish about any of this. This is a recognition of God, the creator of the world, of the cosmos. And it continues. Now we get a little more specific to us. God who ceased work on the seventh day and ascended his throne and robed in majesty, calling the Shabbat a delight. And then we quote a psalm for Shabbat, as if the Sabbath were saying it. A song of Shabbat, it's good to thank God. Let all creatures celebrate God, all praise God, creator, God the creator, including the Sabbath, which God created. So all of this, again, heavens, earth, they all sing your glory. Again, nothing unique to, really particularly unique to us. Now, you see here on Shabbat, we continue with this paragraph. And then it says continue on the next page, which means we skip this passage here that is festivals, a holiday that occurs on a weekday. Because this passage is normally associated with weekdays. So since holidays, the weekday Shachrit is different than the Shabbat one, and the festival one includes, when it occurs on a weekday, not a Shabbat, includes some references to the regular weekday service. Did that make sense? Did I say that clearly?
Mm-hmm.
So on Shabbat, we skip these two paragraphs completely. And all services continue here. So both on Yom Tov and on Shabbat, we continue here. And you see what I mean about the red triangles, right? I'm going to sort of walk through how I would do this in Shul. Titbarach tzurenu malkeinu v'goaleinu. I would give the first line. I would read the first few words and then allow everybody to read quietly. And I, as the leader, will read quietly, right? I mean, that's what we're doing. Then at that first red triangle. Kulam ahuvim, kulam berurim, kulam giborim, vechulam osim be'ema uvira, retzon konam, vechulam podchim et pihem, bikdusha uvtahara, beshira uvizimra, umevarchim umeshabchim, umefarim umaritzim, umakdishim umamlichim. And do you hear my melody at the end there? This is modal singing. What I'm doing is not a specific melody. I'm making up a melody within a particular mode of notes. Ba la 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 la. Those are the notes. La 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 la. And I'm always going to come back to bum 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 as the last little phrasing of how I'm going to do, because that's going to lead people. These are subtle cues to the congregation to join in. Et Shem Ha'el HaMelech HaGadol. Everyone sings together. And I'm going to join back in at the red triangle. Kula mega milim la ba ba la 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 la. Here I have that tag at the end. Whatever I do in the rest, I'm going to end onim ve'omrim be'yira, so that we can all say together, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzevaot, Melochol haaretz kevodo. Hear that same tag, la 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 la. And I'm going to join in again at the red. Va'ofanim v'chayot hakodesh, berash gadol minasim l'matzrafim, leumatam. You can hear it. Ba'meshabchim ve'omrim. Together with me. Mishabchim ve'omrim, Baruch kevod Adonai mimkomo, Le'el Baruch ni'imot yiteinu. And then we'll be quiet through a lot of this, and I'll join back together at the bottom here. And here is the first of the blessings. All of this has been talking about creation, the sun, the moon, the stars, the heavens, the summary of creation, all of the universality of God's creation, how all of the heavenly creatures who serve God on God's throne when God rests on the Sabbath at the end of creation, God, the creator. This is the universal God, not the God of religion and peoples and nations. The name Israel is barely mentioned in the previous 3 pages. We say Or Chadash Al Tzion Ta'ir B'Nizkeh Kulanu Mehera Le'aro. Here's the blessing: Baruch Ata Adonai. Praised are you, Adonai, Yotzer HaMe'orot, who creates the luminaries, meaning the sun and the moon and the stars. Blessing 1. And blessing 1 establishes God as the creator. And primarily, since it's the daytime service, the morning service, God, the creator of light.
And we don't say Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam because this is an action. Is that what you...
No, the action, that's a good question, Sue. Action would add Asher Kiddishanu, right? Who made us holy with the mitzvot. What qualifies to add Malchut, the kingship of God, is frankly esoteric. There's thinking and discussion about whether you just say Shem or whether you say Shem and Malchut, and some blessings add Eloheinu melech haolam and some don't. it's not it's not a comment on their quality or their anything else. It's just two different formulations, some of which include kingship and some of which don't.
Okay.
Now we come to, as you'll see, we're almost at the Kriyat Shema, at the recitation of the Shema. There's just one more page. So if you'll notice, I'm going to go back and give kind of the bird's eye view again. All the way back here that we had the Baruch Hu. That's the call. Oh, you who are assembled, praise God. And you say, we will praise God. And then we're going to do 3 specific brachot that are coming. But they're introduced by these long paragraphs before the blessing itself. Think of the Shabbat Kiddush, where you have this long thing. This long blessing before you say, Baruch atah Adonai mekadesh haShabbat. Praise are you, God, who blesses the Sabbath. That's at the end of that long paragraph. So some blessings come at the end of a lot of introductory text. And then the closing, the signature, is just the Baruch atah Adonai. So that's what we have here. All of this. Hakol yoducha ein kerkra. All of that is introductory paragraph. All of this long acrostic poem is introductory paragraph. All of this is introductory paragraph. All of this is introductory paragraph, including this back and forth, kadosh, 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 until we get here to this blessing. Yotzer HaMeorot. Now, the next one is just one page. So it's a little bit less introductory, but you can see all of this text from the top of this page all the way down to the very last line where you can see the formulation, Baruch atah Adonai, is introduction. It's preface to the blessing. It's giving us the background information, the details, the philosophical, theological underpinning that we're building up to with the blessing, and the very final thing, which is sort of like this intensified, condensed version of the whole paragraph that preceded it. And here, we're not talking about universal creation. We're talking much more specifically about us and our people. You have loved us deeply, Adonai, our God. You showered us with boundless compassion. Our Father, Avinu, Malkeinu, our King, for the sake of our ancestors. Aha. Ba'avur avotenu. Here we start to talk about avotenu, our matriarchs and patriarchs, who trusted and had confidence in you. And you taught them the Torah and the mitzvot, that we might perform and fulfill all the teachings of your Torah with love. Enlighten us to the Torah and the mitzvot. And again, Torah. The Torah is mentioned several times just in this first paragraph. Ha'erinenu b'Toratecha. That's not universal. That's not sun, moon, and stars and God the Creator. That's God who gives the Torah. God the Revealer. Not the God of creation, but the God of revelation. The God who speaks to people. And in this case, specifically to the Jewish people. And not everybody has to keep all the mitzvot. That's not a universal thing. Jews don't think that everybody has to keep mitzvot. It's just us. And then, gather your tzitzit, we say, bring us from the corners of the earth. That's very specific to the Jewish people. when this prayer was written, the peoples of France were not dispersed throughout the world, but the peoples of Israel were dispersed throughout the world. So we say, bring us back together to the land, lead us to the land, for you affect our deliverance. This is the God who delivers the Israelite people and brings us to the Holy Land. This is a God deeply rooted in history. You've chosen us from the other tongues, drawing us nearer to your name, that we might truly acknowledge your oneness. You gave us the Torah. I mean, that's really the only thing that makes the Jewish people unique. That's our only chosenness, is that the Torah comes into the world through us. So here the blessing is Baruch Atah Adonai, praised are you God, HaBocher Be'amo Yisrael Be'ahava, who chooses your people Israel with love. And that frames the giving of the Torah and the mitzvot as an act of divine love. How do we know that God loves us? Because God gave us the Torah and the mitzvot. And that allows us to say the Shema and to say, you should love God. If God loves you and gave you the mitzvot, you should love God and teach your children the mitzvot. The Shema comes straight out of these paragraphs. God, the creator, becomes God, the revealer, who gives Torah and mitzvot to the Israelites and the Jewish people, and that makes a covenant between us. Now, the last blessing, here you see the paragraphs of the Shema, 1, 2, and 3. Remember the emet at the end here that we talked about last time. When there's a minyan, we add those 3 words. And then again, you see there's going to be a long paragraph with several times that we come back and touch base. Quiet recitations. L'dor vador ukayam ushmo kayam v'chiso nachon umalchuto emunato le'ad kayamet udivarav chayim v'kayamim. Ba-na-na-na. That's that same ahava. They call it the ahava rabbah mode because it's what we sing ahava rabbah in. La 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 la. You can, it almost anything goes within that mode. And so long as you, even if you get lost, this happens to me. I'll get lost melodically. It doesn't matter. Ein Elohim zulatecha. Wherever I am at Me'olam Shemecha, it doesn't matter. I can just pause, take a breath, and say ba-na-na-na, na-na-na-na-na-na. Ezrat Avoteinu atahu me'olam. It's an audio clue for everyone to know where we are. And then, again, longer paragraph here with the call and response. And here we're starting to come up to the Amidah. Usually I will announce the page here. I'll say we join together in the middle of page 158, right? This is what I mean, in the middle. I mean, literally in the middle where it says Tehilot. Although sometimes I'll come up here and do a little intro melody from Ram Vinisa. But you come back in here, and now we're really shifting the modal singing to lead up. We leave behind Ahava Rabbah mode, and we kind of lead into the Amidah. And this, the Mi Chamocha, has its own. There's several different composed melodies for Mi Chamocha and Sur Yisrael. Those This whole ending is its separate composed piece of music. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai. That's not the same as Ezra Davotenu, la 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 la. No, this is an orchestral piece. Bum ba-da-dum bum 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 ba-dum bum 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 bum. It's meant to be coronation. It's meant to be regal music. Bum bum nedar ba'kodesh nohora tehilot oh seifele. It's very dramatic music on purpose. Even here, Adonai imloch le'olam va'ed. But you can hear like a giant chorus singing. It's meant to be chorally sung, 4-part harmony, big crescendo kind of thing. And we say, God, you are the stronghold of Israel. At the edge of the sea, you rescued us. This is God's sovereignty, kingship. Who is like you amongst all? Who is like you revered? Moses and Miriam sang your praise. This is God at the sea and at Sinai. This is God, arise and help your people. Redeem us as you promised. You are our Redeemer. Adonai Tzvaot, God of hosts. Do you know what a host is? A host is a battalion. Oh, God of battalions, right? A whole host arrayed against me. This is the God who leads the people out from Egypt. Not God the revealer, not God the creator, but God the Redeemer, who frees captives, who is powerful and strong, who is our help, who redeems us, who is our stronghold, who reigns forever. That's not God the creator. That's God the king and the redeemer. And so the blessing is, Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael, liberator who liberated the people Israel. You loved us, so you liberated us and gave us the Torah and the mitzvot. What these 3 blessings comprise, Yotzer HaMeorot, Baruch atah Adonai Yotzer HaMeorot, who creates the luminaries, Habocher be'amo Yisrael be'ahava, who chooses Israel with love, and Ga'al Yisrael. Those are the 3. And they essentially create a brief history of the entire world up unto the point of the Bible. God creates the world, God chooses Abraham and the Jewish people, and God redeems them from slavery in Egypt to bring them to Sinai and the Torah and mitzvot, ultimately to bring them to the Holy Land and redeem them. All in 3 simple blessings. God the creator, the God of revelation, creation, revelation, redemption.
That's Genesis and Exodus.
Right, that's right. Well, the redemption sort of goes on for a while. All that stuff in the desert, that's all part of the Exodus. Yeah, right.